Namaste everyone. Welcome and greetings to all of you on day 3 of our IKS certificate course on the storytelling legacy of Bharat, where we are trying to understand how stories shaped and sustained an ancient civilization. आप सभी का मैं स्वागत करती हूँ NLD टीम की तरफ से. And over the past 2 days, we have been having enriching, wonderful discussions on storytelling in the Bharatiya tradition. And all of you have participated very actively in these discussions, and we hope that we will continue with the spirit of discussion and engagement for today's session as well. This is the third session of the certificate course, and we will have a session tomorrow and day after as well. It is my privilege to extend gratitude to our collaborating institution, BRB College of Commerce, Raichur, Karnataka, which collaborates with NLD quite frequently for FDPs, courses, webinars, and other online sessions. So we are thankful to the team from the college for their support. Today, we also extend greetings and welcome to Dr. Chitralekha Agrawalji from Delhi. She is a media educator, researcher, a storyteller in herself, by the way. Very interesting stories, narratives, and perspectives she shares on public platforms. And she has previously conducted an interesting FDP on media psychology for NLD, and we look forward to another FDP with her very, very soon. So welcome, Chitralekha ji. It is always very encouraging to have your presence in our sessions. Today, we will be talking about the Mahabharata, and to talk about the Mahabharata and the legacy of storytelling through the Mahabharata, we have a young budding scholar, researcher, academic with us, Dr. Pinku Jha. Namaste, Dr. Pinku. Welcome to the session. और व्यक्तिगत तौर पे मुझे हर्ष और आनंद हो रहा है कि मैं पिंकू को आज के सेशन में डॉक्टर पिंकू झा कहकर संबोधित कर रही हूँ, क्योंकि पिछली बार जब पिंकू ने हमारे साथ सेशन किया था तब उनका पीएचडी ओपन डिफेंस नहीं हुआ. उन्होंने अपना पीएचडी सबमिट किया था. He was awaiting his open defense, but very recently he has completed his doctoral work successfully. The Department of Political Science, the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda, and it is an honor to share this with all of you. Pinku's PhD work was on the idea of welfare in the context of Mahabharata, and previously also he has facilitated an FDP on the Mahabharata as an introductory FDP, and in the very first session, as well as in Zelam's session yesterday, we have discussed a lot about stories from our epics, from our scriptures, and today, with Pinku's guidance and mentorship, we will be understanding this further in terms of the tradition of storytelling in the Mahabharata. I'll briefly introduce Pinku and his work to everyone here in the gathering. Pinku has his basic academic qualifications in political science from the University of Delhi. That is where Chitraji also taught for a couple of years or many years, I believe. So I think it's great to have both of you having some affiliation connection with the University of Delhi here on the platform. He completed his doctoral work in political science from the Maharaja Sayajirao University of Baroda. He's been awarded his PhD recently, for which he was a UGC NET Junior Research Fellow. His PhD work was titled Ideas of Welfare in the Mahabharata, including Bhagavad Gita, and their impact on political thought of select modern thinkers. Pinku has a wide array of professional experience at this young age. He's been closely associated with the Atal Bihari Vajpayee Institute of Public Policy and International Studies as a volunteer. He completed an internship with Indian Knowledge Systems IKS Division, Ministry of Education, and in his recent role, he is an assistant professor at the Faculty of Law, before which he was an assistant professor at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at Vivekananda Global University, Jaipur. The subjects that he has taught and his research interests lie in Indian political thought, Indian political values, IKS, Mahābhārata, life and works of Swami Vivekananda, universal human values, Indian constitution, Indian politics and governance, international relations, Indic feminism, and very recently I had the privilege to present a paper on Shri K.M. Munshi's ideas of education with Pinku at an international conference. Pinku is also, Dr. Pinku, I'm really sorry, is also an author and a contributor to several book chapters and research papers. Most recently, he's contributed to a paper titled Let's Talk Gender, a Multifaceted Approach. He's also authored papers on Gandhian perspectives, Bharatiya Lok Sanskriti, Bharatiya Lok Kalakar, and the list is long. He has also participated as a resource person in several faculty development programs and winter schools. One notable session that he did was at the 43rd Online Symposium on Indian Knowledge Systems, Studies on Statecraft, Political Thought and Governance with Indica Academy. He's also participated in many workshops and presented 11 papers at national, international conferences. He won the Best Research Paper Award with Dr. Manisha Sharma in a National Youth Conference organized by G.B. Pant, University of Agriculture and Technology, Dehradun. And he also won the Best Research Paper Award in a 2-day national webinar organized by Sri Bhagwan Das Adarsh Sanskrit Mahavidyalaya, Haridwar. His very recent interesting works has been on Indic elements in foreign policy. He was a fellow of the Feminist Foreign Policy Program at IMPRI, as part of which he was awarded a prestigious research fellowship. It is my privilege and pleasure to hand over the session to Dr. Pinku today, and he will be discussing the narrative structure, Smrti, and hermeneutic traditions of Kathā found in the Mahābhārata. So we are all excited and eager to understand how the Mahābhārata, which is one of our most profound, long-lasting, eternal, and immortal epics, incorporates the tradition of storytelling. I would encourage everyone to also consider following Dr. Pinku's work on the Mahābhārata. And in future, if you do have a chance, please attend his sessions on the Mahābhārata, which will introduce you to the epic and also help you appreciate its wisdom. So once again, welcome Pinku, and let's begin today's session.
Namaste, namaste. Thank you so much, ma'am. I hope I'm audible enough to all the participants, and the PPT is also visible to everyone. If there's any issue from my side, please let me know. And yes, again, once I would like to thank Dr. Nidhi for introducing me to all the participants. And I have seen a lot of people that I know. One of the participants I have just seen, Mary G from Christo Jayanti University. I got to know her when I was working at my previous institution. So welcome you, ma'am, to this platform.
Thank
And
you so
yes,
much, sir.
yeah,
And
and
heartiest congratulations, Dr. Pinku.
thank you so much, ma'am. So yeah, it's a privilege to share some of my ideas or whatever I have somehow studied in my last 5 years, whatever I've just discussed on the text of Mahabharata. So with that particular context only, I got this chance to share some of the maybe we can say the content or some of the material which is much related to the this given theme or this devoted theme, that is storytelling in Indic tradition. So the title for today's session would be this narrative structure, Smrti, and hermeneutic traditions of Katha found in the Mahabharata. So you can see the first slide. This is the title for today's session, where we will be trying to discuss basically these. We can just yeah, see the narrative structure whenever we are talking about Mahabharata or like any other Indic text. We do have different way of writing a particular text. So if we have a lot of scholars today who are joining this session, they must be having background in literature, right? Maybe English literature or Sanskrit or maybe Hindi or any other language. If they do have this idea or of literature, writing the literary style, so we do have different kind of literary style, right? So what exactly is the distinctive about the Mahabharata? So since it has been considered by a lot of scholars, like it is a kind of narrative itself, right? It provides a structure which is somehow is a one of the epic Mahakavya of Indic tradition. So in that particular form, when we are talking about narrative structure of this text, what exactly that signifies, so that we'll try to understand. Then we will try to understand how it is connected to this tradition of Smriti, right? Yesterday and even day before yesterday, Nidhi ma'am and Zela ma'am, they have provided a backdrop to it, right? When we are talking about Indic tradition or the knowledge tradition of India, we do have different ways of looking at it. So we do have Shruti tradition, we have Smriti traditions, right? So why or how we are locating Mahabharata in this Smriti paradigm? So that would be another aspect we'll try to understand. And yes, then we'll come to this hermeneutical tradition. So hermeneutical tradition, again, this term itself considered to be one of the Western or of Western origin, which is in simple terms, we can say it is about interpreting a text. So to what extent we are talking about Mahabharata in terms of its hermeneutical tradition, right? And all these things, the narrative structure, Smriti and hermeneutical traditions, all these are coming together and they are framing a kind of portion of this Katha, right? Like how Katha has been developed over a period of time in Indic tradition and particularly in the reference to the Mahabharata. So this would be our basic understanding for this whole session that we are going to do today, right? So this one, the second particular, this slide is just giving a brief background why we are trying to discuss Mahabharata today, right? So when we are talking about narrative of the Mahabharata, it is very complex, right? It is structured as layered narrative tradition. We do not have one particular single way to look at this text, right? There is a multi-layered understanding. We will talk about it in later the coming slides as well, where we see that there are multiple stories are embedded within other stories. So we do not have just one story where we have some specific plot, some specific incidents, and we are just coming to know something out of that story. No, that is not the case. We do have complicated structure in this Mahabharata. This text of Mahabharata is having multi-layered structure. So that should be, we have to keep that thing in our mind. And it shows specifically three important things, right? One is the oral memory tradition. So when we are talking about Smriti tradition, it is actually about the oral memory, right? Because we are talking about how we are able to memorize something and how we are passing it to our coming generations, right? So that is very much there when we are talking Mahabharata. So that structure is based on that oral memory tradition. So if we are talking multiple traditions are there, it is because of this oral memory tradition only. Then we have philosophical reflections. In Indic traditions, we do have, for example, we talk about Shadguna, we talk about these sixfold policies, like Shad Darshan. We have 6 different form of philosophical dimensions to the Indic knowledge system. So how, when we are talking about this text, in this text we have multiple philosophies, they are coming together, they are talking to each other. So we do not have just one particular tradition, for example, that just Nyaya tradition, Nyaya philosophy is very much relevant there, and we do not have Sankhya, we do not have Yoga Darshan. No, it is not there. Yeah, we have this Shad Darshan, 6 school of Bharatiya philosophy. So therefore, we find again the multiplicity or a multi-layered aspect of this narrative. And yes, then it comes to the interpretive storytelling. So if we interpret same story, can have multiple interpretations over a period of time. So when I was doing research on the text of Mahabharata, it seems very confusing, it seems very difficult to say that this is the one way or this is the only text that is considered to be the original, the Mahabharata. So there are some debates going on what need to be considered as the original or the authentic text, right? So what is the reason behind it? Because over a period of time, we have this debate that yes, a lot of things have been added to it, a lot of extrapolations have been made. So in that sense, there is this method of hermeneutics, or there is this method of interpretation. It comes to the picture, and it helps us to understand that yes, there are different interpretations from different regions, from different linguistic backgrounds, right, different cultural backgrounds, and they do have their own we can say ownership over a particular kind of interpretations. So when we are talking about narratives of Mahabharata, we have to see that multi-layered structure is there, and it shows 3 different dimensions. One is the oral memory, second one is the philosophical dimensions, and the third one is the interpretative storytelling method, right? So with all these ideas, we can say that this epic is it is actually helping us to understand history and itihas. In previous session, in yesterday's session, at the end, we have discussed, or we had a small debate on whether we should use the term history or itihasa when we are talking about Indic tradition. So particularly in terms of Mahabharata, we have been seeing it in the text in number of times we find the term itihasa only, right? It does not mean there is no element of history. What we can see here, that it comes to itihas. Itihas includes the history also. That history can be again in the Western sense, that is somehow we are talking about some tangible factual evidences. So it does not mean history and itihas are completely contrary in picture. Rather than history, as per the this reference of Mahabharata, if we are coming to the Mahabharata, we find a lot of examples where we do have those understanding of history, where we have archaeological evidences, we do have astronomical evidences, we have multiple literary sources to understand that yes, this tradition, this Mahabharata is having that historical the portion as well. And along with it, it is not just talking about that history, but rather than it includes other aspects. That history should be attached to the dharma, it should it should be attached to the philosophy of purushartha. So that kind of itihasa, that kind of something has happened in the past, and from that particular incident, that particular activity, that particular story, what good can be, we can come up with some good things, right? We are coming with some values, right? So that is how in that way we can say itihas is a more wider phenomena, right? And plus here comes the idea of reflective narratives also. So we'll come to this concept of katha in coming sections also. But as if now the main concern is why Mahabharata and how Mahabharata is helping us to understand this concept of katha, hermeneutics, interpretation, all these things. Those are somehow connected to the storytelling tradition only, right? The very foundation, the background it provides us to understand Mahabharata's storytelling tradition, right? I hope I'm going not going too fast, or the things are being maybe understood by everybody. Like if there are some confusions, you can just write it down in the chat box, and maybe we can have some interaction obviously in the later phase. Yes.
Yeah, we can use the chat box actively for discussion. If we feel, Dr. Pinku, we can consider taking a pause after 15-20 minutes,
Yes.
but till then, any comments, they are welcome in the chat box.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So coming to this slide, I have something maybe just from the particular questionnaire or maybe particular form that I have shared in the group yesterday, right? So I have found almost 30 to 35 participants have filled that form, and in which if you can see this, the very first question is, according to you, what do you mean by Katha, basically, right? So when we are talking about this whole tradition of Mahabharata, what does it mean, right? So I have just provided some options for it, right, to understand that how or in what you perceive it, right? So what I have found, most of you have selected this particular thing that is connected to the story only, right? That 41% of participants have said it is Katha is equitable to the concept of story only, right? But there are a few people, almost 29.2, or maybe we can say like narratives, and another section, the 29.2, the green one, is talking about category that includes above mentioned things, but along with it we do have some other aspects also, right? So it does not mean we are rejecting this blue one or the orange section, but rather than this green one is helping us to understand everything, like not just a story, plot, narrative. Rather than we do have, we can see Katha is not restricted to story. It is not restricted to just some plots we are having. It is not just a specific narrative. Rather than we have some other aspects to it also, right? As we have just mentioned, that itihas does not mean only history, but yes, history is one of the aspect of itihas, we can say. Similarly, when it comes to Katha, in generally we see that there are some specific questions also I have asked, like what are the elements if we say that Katha is this, so what do you think? So what I have found, a lot of responses and a lot of ways in which you have mentioned that it is somehow a shared ideas. We do have some plots, they do have some connections, some conversations, we do have some sequences of events, right? There should be some patra, some characters in a Katha, right? And here is the narrator's point of view is central. So if I am narrating a story, if I am the Katha agar main suna raha hu, to I do have some perspectives with me also, so that perspective plays an important role as well. So some of you have also mentioned this, and it actually help us to make influence on the people who are listening the story or this Katha particularly, right? So it has a clear purpose, it has this knowledge conveying process, we do have the idea of truth, right? So all these things are somehow very much relevant when we are talking about this Katha. So there's the language, emotions, dialogues, and not just this, but also the elements such as music, gestures. So maybe in some of the one of the next session that I'll be taking maybe next week, in that particular thing we'll try to understand how it has been reflected in some of the examples. So for that particular part we will discuss there as well, right? But yes, this is how all of you have responded to this question, that yeah, these are some specific things we are having when it comes to Katha, right? So it is maybe well received. It is a good response that I have received from all of you. And coming to one important part, that is the next question, where I have asked that when the Mahabharata is mentioned, in general, all of you have responded to the concept of Katha, right? But when it comes to Mahabharata, which Katha do you instinctively recall? Because Mahabharata is a text which has been used as a Katha, a medium of, the essence of Katha need to be circulated among people. So how we can do that? So what are the major stories? What are the major examples we are having? So a lot of you have discussed mentioned about Bhagavad Gita. Perfectly fine. Then we do have this, it has been considered the story of Pandav and Kaurav, right? So this is a very general but a very essential part when it comes to Mahabharata, right? Then the very important part, something very we can say the very distinctive example has been given, that when we say that Katha where Arjun and Duryodhan visit Lord Krishna to seek the help. So at that particular point of time, when we have heard of this story where Duryodhan demands that that we need your that's the sena, everything that you are having, the military that Krishna is having. But on the other hand, Arjun is asking for just Krishna to be someone who can help us in this war. So that story has been mentioned by somebody that is also having a sense of katha, right? That is not just talking about some story, that is not just about talking about some plots, rather than, yes, Narayani Sena versus Krishna. Yes. So at that particular point of time, if we are talking about this story, it is not just about some characters. It is not just about talking about some, we can say, some conversation is going on, right? Some plots are being set. It is not like that. We have some specific ideas attached to it, and those are based on the political values, that dharma based ideas we are talking about. So when we are saying Indian storytelling or Indic storytelling method, so to what extent we are aligned with our value system. So with this reading, with this katha, we do have those kind of ideas also attached to it. It is not just presenting a song. It is not just presenting an act in front of all of you, but rather than to what extent it has that idea of dharma, to what extent we are talking about the value of purushartha, right? So all these things are very much important. So yes, then Vyasa Janma, how did Vyasa took birth, right? That story of Satyavati and Rishi Parashar. So it is not just the birth of Vyasa, but rather than what kind of value system, what kind of knowledge we are getting out of that whole story. That is very much important. So that consistency, that when we find, we are saying that Mahabharata is a multi-layered text, it has multiple narratives, multiple stories, but what is at the center, what is essential, what makes all these stories, all these embedded stories one, what is the connecting or the jotting point here? That is something we are saying that makes it Indic, है ना? जब हम इंडिक नॉलेज की बात कर रहे हैं तो उसको जोड़ क्या रहा है, that is very much important. So this is how all of you have responded to this question also. That is also very different examples I have found. I have just put a few of them, right? So thank you so much for responding
Dr. Pinku,
to this.
can I interrupt?
Yes, please.
Pinku, that black that window, can you just drag it down, because it will appear like that in the recording. ये जो विंडो है इसको आप नीचे खींच सकते हैं.
Okay, fine, ma'am. What I was thinking, because meanwhile I will not be able to see the questions and all, so maybe I'll just do it full screen. Fine.
Yeah. I
So
will anyways be reading the questions for you.
Sure. Yes, perfect. So is it fine, ma'am?
Yeah. Just go to full screen. आप full screen कर दीजिए. I
Just
understand that in Google Meet, the moment we go to full screen, we cannot see anything.
Is it better?
Yes. I think Dr. Chitra, now it's better, right?
Do I need to move it to back, the previous slide? Is it required? Just for a couple of seconds?
Yeah, we can go quickly for a couple of seconds and then.
This is what, according to you, is more close to Katha. And I have found this response that almost 29% people have said that category that includes above mentioned terms. So it has a more inclusive understanding of Katha. When we are talking about Katha, it includes story. We do have some specific plotting. We do have narrative also. But there are some other things. So what are those other things that we are trying to understand here, right? And these are some specific elements, as some of you have mentioned about it. So I hope it is fine. Can I move to another slide?
Yes. Now it's perfectly fine. You can.
I hope this is also visible to everyone. This is just a small.
This is good.
Yeah, this is a small gist out of all those responses. Right, Draupadi, specifically when I'm writing about Draupadi, so some of you have said when it comes to Mahabharata, it comes to us that yes, Draupadi related stories. So particularly one of the respondent have mentioned about that Chiraharan story, right? So yes, that is one particular katha we can say, but we will discuss it, how to interpret, how to, what are the possible ways to understand these things, right? So that we will discussing later on also. I hope as if now everything is going fine. So shall we move further?
Yes. Let's move further.
Yes. So the very first thing is about the narrative architecture of the Mahabharata. So since our main concern is what exactly is the narrative style. So narrative is not just about narrating something. So the way I'm narrating it, it is very important. So as we already have discussed, it is a multi-layered storytelling structure that Mahabharata is having with it, right, within it. So we have three important, we can say, levels. The very first level, if we'll start talking about the Mahabharata, the story starts with this particular aspect, right? There is this person called Ugrasrava Sauti, right? Sauti is a title given to all the bards, all the storytellers of that particular, text in Mahabharata tradition. We are referring to Sauti as a storyteller, right? So there is this person called Ugrasrava, who was a son of Loma. And who was Loma? He was the one of the student of Maharshi Vyas. So Vyas was having 5 different students. One of them were this one was Loma, and unke jo putra the wo the Ugrasrava Sauti. So he starts narrating this story of Mahabharata to the Rishi Shaunak in this Naimesh Aranya. So Naimesh namak jo jangal tha, there was the forest that is named as a Naimesh Aranya. We call it Aranya, is basically forest, right? So Naimesh Aranya, wahan par there was this yagya was going on, and at that particular place, Ugrasrava came, and he has been requested by Rishi Shaunak that please narrate us the story of Mahabharata, because the Ugrasrava, he was earlier at another yagya where he has actually listened to the Vaishampayana, where Vaishampayana, another student of Vyasa, who was narrating the same story to King Janmeja at the Sarpasaptra, jo Sarp Yagya tha. At that particular point of time, when we are talking about this story, King Janmeja, one of the, we can say, the family ka jab hum lineage ki baat karte hain, to King Janmeja was actually very much, he was not happy with this whole serpent things, and he thought of coming with a yagya which will try to kill all the snakes all over the world. So with that particular yagya, at that particular place, Vaishampayan, again the student of Vyasa, Veda Vyasa, he was narrating the story to him. And the third part is the inner narratives told by the characters only. So when we are talking Mahabharata, we will see different chapters. For example, in Adi Parva, it starts from the Ugrasrava. Sometimes Ugrasrava is speaking something to Rishi Shaunak, right? And we'll see that within story, we will have another story where Vaishampayana will narrate the story to King Janmeja. And wahan se we will see, maybe for example, that we have some fable story, some kind of, that we can say when the Bhishma is talking to Yudhishthir, they do have stories among themselves. In their conversation, they discusses that itihasa, it was happened earlier, like similarly what is happening today, it has been with the case, and bahut saal pehle there is something happened in this way only. So some connecting dots, connecting some inner narratives was also something very relevant here. So at this particular point of time, what we see that at one point of time, Ugrasrava is considered to be a narrator. Another point of time, we see Vaishampayan is also considered to be narrator. And yes, at some other point of time, we will see some other characters in the Mahabharata. They do have the same authority to narrate the story of Mahabharata in one or another way. So these are 3 different levels we see that in the Mahabharata. We will see that narration is being carry forward in this particular structure. So there is this scholar who is very much significant when we are talking the narrative and the hermeneutical structure of Mahabharata. He is Vishwa Adluri, Professor Vishwa Adluri. He is associated to Hindu University of America. So he has some work on this particular thing as well, that narrative architecture, narrative hermeneutics, right? So all the participants can go through this article as well, his work also, Vishwa Adluri. So उन्होंने क्या बताया है, he is specifically saying that because of this style, right, this narrative structure, we have the possibility that this epic is providing that contains multiple voices and interpretations. So in the Mahabharata, what we see, there are multiple voices, multiple interpretations. Since we can say the very origin of the text at the present time, we have almost, if we see the work done by critical edition of the Mahabharata, right, by the Bhandarkar Oriental Institute of Pune, they found almost 1259 manuscripts, right? And they are in different languages, right? Different variations are there. So these kind of the, you can say, modifications and interpolations and writings, different styles, they do have the presence in this tradition of Mahabharata. Why? Because of the very narrative style itself, that multi-layered narrative style, the storytelling structure that we are having in the Mahabharata. It provides the possibility which help us to understand the multiple voices and interpretations as well, right? I hope it, as if now whatever we have just discussed, is it clear to everyone? If I hope it is making sense. Now we are coming to another very important term when it comes to Katha tradition of Mahabharata, that is the Smriti, right? So it provides the, again, the guiding force to the Katha tradition of Mahabharata, right? And why it is so? Because we do have this Smriti, as we already have discussed in previous sessions also, right? It is about the remembered knowledge. It is not just the Shruti. It is not something revealed knowledge. It is not Veda, right? It is something that has been evolved through interpretations, retellings. Fine. So this is the very base. When we are saying Mahabharata is one of the text, and I guess one of the largest text, right? Largest poetry, largest epic, what we see, largest itihas ka document hai, jo not just in India but actually in the world, right? So why it is so? Because of this, the nature of its Smriti aspect only. Because of its Smriti aspect, it has been considered as one of the largest epic, right? So it is actually classifying it that Mahabharata is an itihas within the Smriti tradition, right? And why so? Because it actually helps us to preserve the cultural memory. It has been evolved through commentaries, retellings, ethical interpretations, and they have been changing over a period of time. Why I'm saying that? For example, since even in my thesis I have tried to mention, actually chosen a few thinkers, right? Modern Indian thinkers, in which I have selected Gandhi, Sri Aurobindo, Tilak. So how these thinkers, not just these three people, but even a lot of other scholars, a lot of other thinkers, they have interpreted this text, right? For example, if you'll see Tilak in the modern Indian thought, he was referring to this Gita Rahasya, one of the very important part of Mahabharata, and what he sees, how he is considering that text as a political text, how this text has helped him to strengthen the masses, right? So that he writes the Gita Rahasya. So one particular text, one particular tradition of Mahabharata is having multiple interpretations with us, right? So that actually is being somehow, that is possible just because of its traditions, very essence of Smriti थी, right? So because वो Smriti tradition का भाग है, इसलिए संभव भी हो पाया है. Fine. So that is again the important thing connected to the Smriti thing, right? Now we are coming to this Katha as a we can say the mode of knowledge transmission. So when we are saying that oral tradition, right, in India, not just literary traditions, Mahabharata is considered to be one of the major literary text. That is fine, है ना? Literary tradition का important part है, but it is not just a literary tradition. Rather than it has the scope to influence the masses through the medium of oral tradition, right? Oral culture के through भी it has helped a lot to transmit it from one generation to another, right? So here when it comes to in Indian tradition, Katha is not merely an entertainment but a pedagogical and philosophical method. So we are not just discussing these stories of maybe we can say Dyut Parva or this the Jayadratha Vadh, or maybe we are not just talking about Agyatavas in the Mahabharata to understand some kind of that thriller experience or some kind of entertainment based experience. It is not that only, right? It has the scope to understand philosophy. It has a scope of method to teach people, right? So that scope is very much important. So it is not just the entertainment thing, right? It actually conveys ethical dilemmas, political wisdom, and spiritual teaching. So we do have the one of the the major, we can say the biggest dilemma that in the Mahabharata was that has been faced by Arjun, Like, is it required to fight against my own family members, or is it anyway important to rule the nation after killing my all the the family members? Is it justified? Similar question has been asked by Yudhishthir to the Bhishma in Yudhishthir Parva, right? So these dilemmas are actually very much important. So with the help of different stories, Mahabharata help us to understand not just the conversation, not just with the dialogue that has been performed by two characters here. Rather than two characters are actually coming to discuss some other story also. So with the help of those stories, we are trying to understand the dilemma, how to come out of those dilemmas, what kind of political wisdom is important, right? So these are very much important when it comes to knowledge transmission with the help of Katha, right? Similarly, the dialogue in the Bhagavad Gita that we already have just mentioned, stories of kings and sages, right, illustrating Raj Dharma, moral leadership, fine. So these are very much important here. And when it comes to the last part, one of the last section, if I'm able to just, yeah, so okay, fine. So coming to this particular aspect, if you can see at the right side, I have just mentioned some of the bullet points. So what does it signifies when we are talking Katha, right? I have just tried to explain different viewpoints, different aspects when we are talking Katha as a mode of knowledge transmission in the Mahabharata. Fine. But how to connect it to the wider understanding of the concept of Katha in Indian tradition. So when we are talking Indian tradition, particularly in the Jainism, we have a particular character called Katha. We have a particular geographical region which is Katha, right? In Vaishnavism, in Vaishnav tradition of Indian, maybe we can say tradition, we do have some sacred narratives. We are attaching some of the the spiritual part, some sacredness about the supreme being. So the stories, those are being narrated by the Vaishnav text, they are somehow revolved to the sacred part only, right? In the Puran, we have some kind of poetic composition, some fable literature that is considered to be Katha. In Kavya, we consider it as an imaginative narrative. So it is not something very much historical, something which is connected to just itihas, but it is something imaginative, some fables, some stories, those are not very much present in maybe we can say tangible sense, right? Then we have in Ayurveda, right? We have Ayurveda tradition also. So there we have Katha means something related to discussion or a medicinal product, right? So that is how we have some of the different aspect, different viewpoints when we are. Yes, Zelam ji, मैं एक मिनट में वहां पर आता हूँ left part पे just to finish this one. Then we have in Vyakran, use it as a fictitious prose, something which is not in a very fixed manner. The prose is being somehow changed, molded in some different ways. So it considered to be Katha, right? In Vedant, it is considered to be scripture. In Dharma Shastra, again. So how we are considering Katha. In Sanskrit, we have Katha means कहना, right? Kathana, कोई चीज को कहना. तो वो कहना is not just to converse with something. It is not just telling something. There are different viewpoints from a person's name in a story. Jain में एक story Jainism में हमारे पास है जहां पर the person is having some of the the problem से वो बाहर कैसे निकलता है, तो उस character का नाम कथा है एक story में. Vaishnavism में हम supreme being को we are trying to discuss him as that story is considered as a katha, right? In Puran, composition की बात कर रहे हैं. So there are different aspects, right? But in Mahabharata, when it comes to Mahabharata, we are trying to understand how different aspects जो भी हम कथा के और variations है उसको कैसे समझने की कोशिश कर पा रहे हैं, right? So that is one thing. Now just give me a minute to just move this part so that we can also discuss this.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So basically, yeah, this
Sure,
part
sure.
is.
So if you is it okay? I can actually guide you how to pull it to the other side. Like you just
Yeah,
have to
please.
wait till the hand part. Like just scroll on the part where it says Google one.
Okay. It is
It's okay, sir. No problem.
fine.
This
Yeah,
is
Okay,
very
it's
yeah, it
done.
is better actually. It is better. Fine. I'm not able to see anybody,
Yeah.
but just PPT is there. So please guide me if in between there are some problems being occurred. So yeah, so this particular part is
Sure,
very
sir.
important. So thank you so much for reminding me to this part. So you can read the Mahabharata uses narrative to communicate normative ideas about society and governance. So particularly, I have referred society and governance, but it does not mean we have to just restrict to this part. But main concern is this uses narrative to communicate normative ideas. So when we are saying normative ideas, it does not mean something which is existing in presently to our eye, or something we are not able to feel something at present. Rather than we are hoping to achieve some ideal values, some values, right? How we should work, right? Some kind of prescriptions we are attaching to our life. So उस चीज को communicate करने के लिए महाभारत की stories, not just in Mahabharata. So there are two different ways we can say. Internally, in the text itself, we have a lot of instructions, a lot of examples. That is one part. But with the help of those texts, we have seen a lot of retellings, a lot of commentaries, a lot of other performing arts based techniques. Those are being used to again help us to achieve certain kind of normative ideas. So the first part we are doing today, and the second part, that how performing arts, how other literary works have actually used this Mahabharata story, और महाभारत के टेक्स्ट को कैसे यूज किया गया उन नॉर्मेटिव आइडियाज को स्प्रेड करने में. दैट इज आवर कंसर्न. वी विल बी टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट आल्सो इन वन ऑफ द next section. In coming session we'll be talking about that. But as if now the main concern was to understand that when we are talking Katha does not mean just a story. That story means something, I'm just telling some plotting, or the very initial part me when I have asked a question and all of you have responded to this question, that it is sometimes it considered to be just plotting. It can be considered to be some conversation going on within some among some individuals. So that is not limited to that. So different aspects we have tried to figure out. So I hope again it makes sense as if now. And now we are coming to the third part, that is the hermeneutical traditions. So the very first one, what we have done, the narrative part, that narrative structure actually. So how a structure of Mahabharata has been designed, and we call it a narrative structure, multi-layered narrative structure, that we have tried to discuss in the initial part. Then we came to the Smrti part also, that how it is connected to the Smrti part. And now we are talking about how Katha is being interpreted, how it has been used to understand the hermeneutics, right, of the text. So these are at different levels. So I have just selected a few of them. For example, dharmic interpretation. At the very beginning, I have said when we are talking Indic tradition, we find this term called dharma. Again, categorically, I would like to mention it has nothing to do with the term religion, right? Rather than dharmic interpretation shall be considered as a dharmic only. It has nothing to do with the religious interpretation, right? So we have to be very cautious about the use of this term. So what does it mean? It is talking about ethical teachings, duties, right? For example, if we are saying about interpretations of dharma in political life, so being a good ruler, how to behave, right? So for example, at one point of time, if we'll discuss about the example of Satyavati in the Mahabharata, when we start reading Mahabharata, the very beginning, if you must have watched the TV serials on Mahabharata, we start from the Ganga, Shantanu and story of Satyavati, right? So where what we see, and not just in that serial only I'm saying, but even in the text also, what we find, Satyavati's character is very important to understand it, right? Because Satyavati, in contrast to the Yudhishthir, if we see, like when we are saying dharmic interpretation, how to be a dharmic ruler in a political life, or if I want to become a leader, if I want to be a very politically correct person in the public life, how to act. Is it something like the very biased nature should be there, just like the Satyavati initially she made certain conditions, some terms and conditions before marrying to the Shantanu. So in her different examples, when we see different incidents connected to Satyavati, once after the another, we find she has been failing, right? She could not ensure that her lineage can establish the rule over the Hastinapur. And therefore what we see, after a point of time, she accepts its failure, and she says that whatever she has done, it is against the dharma, right? So she actually begs to she requests to Bhishma, and some these examples actually provides us how to be politically correct, even if we do something which actually help us just to ensure our own well-being. It can lead us to in a devastating future. So that has been a kind of problematic aspect that has been attached to the Satyavati in the text. But later on, what we see when it comes to Yudhishthir's conversation with Bhishma, there some specific prescriptions have been made that no, if you are going to do this thing, it will not help you to have a better kind of good decision maker in your political life. So that kind of idea was the dharma. So अगर आप धर्म का इस्तेमाल करोगे, धर्म का प्रयोग करोगे, केवल तभी उसी समय आपको एक better life, जो good life we discuss is good life. So that is not possible until unless we are following the path of dharma. So these two examples, these two stories can be narrated differently, right? We can discuss the example of narrative, which is not been much given emphasis. We don't discuss as much about Satyavati's character, but that character can have the stories connected to Satyavati, can help us to understand what not to do, right? That is one way of understanding the dharmic interpretation of the text. Then second one is the philosophical interpretation. No doubt, yes, we do have Vedantic interpretation of Gita. We have Sankhya based interpretation. We have some kind of we can say Dvaita based interpretations, right? So philosophical discourses are also being very much relevant to the text, right? So how we are interpreting them, that is another way. So that we are, if I'm telling a narrative, if I'm telling a story, to what extent, what are the possible areas of philosophical aspects that can be applied to it, right? Similarly, we have some allegorical interpretations, right? So in today's term, we have some of the novels, those are being written on Draupadi, Karna, or maybe Bhishma. So these novels have been, some particular character have been selected, and we can interpret them symbolically. Shashi Tharoor have written something on Mahabharata, some Iravati Kane has written on Draupadi. So all these allegorical interpretations, right, are also very much important, and they do have that possibility. Like, this is how we can say hermeneutics is working there, right? Because of the textual nature, that the narrative style, we do have that kind of freedom to interpret in a different way as well, right? So yes, Kurukshetra as the battlefield of mind, that is very simple and a general way of interpreting it, but we can see it in a different way as well, right? And we do have some modern interpretation in terms of politics, political ethics, gender, power, and legitimacy. Different aspects, different concepts can be applied to it. And in this particular framework only, if I would like to mention my own work, where I have tried to discuss the ideas of welfare. So if I'm trying to extrapolate the ideas of welfare from the text, I have to use this method of hermeneutics, right? So that is the way of looking at the text, the possible areas to be explored in the Mahabharata itself. So that is another beauty of the text and the tradition of Mahabharata. Now if we come to the narrative techniques, what are the different techniques to see the Mahabharata? We have some embedded stories within stories. For example, a story of Nala Damayanti, Shakuntala Dushyant. We have story of we can say Savitri and Satyavan, right? So all these stories are somehow being narrated within this Mahabharata. Like in one parva, we will find one story is being discussed. For example, just taking the example of Bhishma parva, right? If we are talking about Gita, right? So in Gita, in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we have different examples. Those are being given to Arjun by the Shri Krishna, that what you have to do, what not to do, what has been done in the past by some particular actor, and from that particular actor's action, what you can learn, right? Similarly, if we see in one of the example, one parva, we have some stories going on where all these Pandavas were very much they were very much concerned after Draupadi has been taken away by these maybe we can say the the enemy side. So the story has been narrated by Rishi Markandeya, that this same thing have been happened in the Treta Yuga, by the Ravan to the Sita. So we see the small, Rama Upakhyan, a small Upakhyan has been narrated there. So Akhyan, Upakhyan, these are the different techniques have been used in the writing of Mahabharata. Right. Then we have dialogical narratives, for example, dialogues, that is very much relevant. And then we have moral ambiguity, can be another technique. So to understand one character from a different way, right? So they are very much complex. It is very difficult to say that one character is the hero completely and one is the completely a villain. If we see the Karn, we do have different examples where we can see that Karna's good side has been highlighted. At one point of time, we can see that all the negative aspects have been highlighted. Similarly, we can see some of the problems associated to even Sri Krishna, right? But at some other point of time, we can see some good points of the Sri Krishna. So that kind of moral dilemma when we face it. So in the Mahabharata itself, that possibility, that scope has been provided by the author, we can say, or the narrator, or the person who has composed this text. They actually did provide that kind of possibility with us, right? And yes, there is this particular another style where the narrative as an argument in Indian philosophy that I am just mentioning specifically. So Astavakra Gita as multivalent narrative. So narrative became an argument also, right? So for example, in the text Mahabharata also, but apart from Mahabharata, if we'll see the text of Indian tradition, sometimes we see the argument. Making arguments can be another way, right? It can be also considered as a narrative. So for example, Kathopanishad, where Yama and Nachiketa, they are having conversation. Within Mahabharata, if we see the, at some point of time, Vidur and Dhritarashtra, they are having some kind of argument over some particular issue. In the Dhyutapar, when Draupadi is arguing against this whole process of Chiraharan. So all these argument based ideas, they are also forming the kind of narrative style also. This is also kind of technique we are seeing here, right? So yes, some of the scholars, if we see, for example, Romila Thapa, one of the historian, we see that what she says that that epic like Mahabharata reflects social memory and evolving traditions rather than fixed historical records. So if we say that we do have some historical records only and we just have to follow one by one to them only, that is not possible. In Indian tradition, we do have some of the social memory that has been evolving over a period of time. Similarly, we have another scholar called Fitzgerald. What he says that epic self-reflective narrative style, it has the scope to reflect something within, right? So it becomes a means of philosophical inquiry. So if I am reading Mahabharata, or not just Mahabharata, if I am reading any of the Indic text, I do have my own kind of way of looking at it. It does not mean I'll deconstruct the text originality in every terms, but we have to keep that essential part also. We have to find that essential part before reading that text. So there should be a kind of pattern, a method that needs to be clear before beginning to the reading to the text. And that is what has been suggested by a lot of scholars here. So why it is relevant for storytelling studies? Studying narrative, structure, and Smrti shows that it is a method of knowledge tradition that we just have discussed about it. Then we have, how to preserve it, a collective memory, ethical reflection. And why am I referring to these things? Because if we are aware of these specific things, somehow it has been also covered in previous 2 sessions, right? But my concern is to remind us that when we are talking Mahabharata also, why Mahabharata is considered to be one of the major connecting text or tradition to this whole tradition of storytelling in Indian knowledge system, right? So yes, these narratives have plurality, and that plurality actually allows us to continuous reinterpretation. So these are some of the major things that we have discussed. And now coming to the conclusion part, the Mahabharata represents a sophisticated storytelling tradition, we can say, where narrative structure, cultural memory, that is Smrti, we can say, and the interpretative tradition, which is hermeneutics. So जो कथा का जो tradition है, जब हम महाभारत कथा की बात कर रहे हैं कि इसको कथा कैसे समझा जाए, तो क्या कहना चाह रहा है, so it helps us to understand the narrative structure, the cultural memory, and interpretative tradition. And what is common on all these things, if I may ask all the participants, so what do you find? Like whatever I have just said, can somebody give me one particular term which is very much relevant or maybe common to all these things: the narrative structure, cultural memory, and the interpretative tradition? What is something common in this? So can I have some of the responses?
So you want us to
Yes,
find
yes,
out
yes, yes.
common thread between these two narrative structures, Smrti, and the hermeneutical interpretation, right?
G, yes, yes.
Okay. Any responses? Any quick responses in the chat box? Or anybody wants to unmute and respond to Dr. Pinku's question? Zalem has typed a long response.
So, but it's not related to the question that you have asked, Pinkuji. This is something that was there in my mind, and I wanted to put it down in the comments. So, if you can just go through it, and if you can just give your insights about it, maybe right now
Pinku sir,
or
can you
after the.
repeat your question if you don't mind?
Yes, yes, yes.
I was not.
The question is, we have tried to discuss three important things in terms of Katha tradition of Mahabharata, and these are particularly the narrative structure. Then we have discussed the Smriti part, right? The cultural memory. And the third part is the hermeneutics, that is interpretative pattern, right? So when we are talking these three things, what is common about all these three things that can be associated to this tradition of Mahabharata को समझने के लिए, how we can talk about these three things in a single word, or maybe something that comes to your mind. अगर ये तीनों चीजें हम बात कर रहे हैं, let me write
Yes,
these
sir.
three
We'll
things.
find out or we'll think an answer.
Okay, fine, you can take some time. Meanwhile, what we can do, let me just
I
write
also
the.
had another query typed there, sir. If you
Just
can
a
see
minute.
my
Just
name
a
as
minute.
Shweta.
Please, Shweta ji, please hold on. I request all participants, please do not interrupt when anybody else is speaking. Number two, we are just opening up for Q&A, so please wait for me to call out your name or to read out your question before you can just unmute yourself and speak. So kindly let's follow the decorum of interaction on this platform, please. So yes, Pinku is typing his question, and you can all reflect on that question and type in your responses. Meanwhile, Pinku, do you want to hold your response to this question, or we can first open up for questions, interaction, and then at the end of the session, you want to give a response to this?
Okay, the question by Zela ma'am.
Okay, wait. We'll first take the question by Shweta ji. She has a query regarding the normative aspect of Mahabharata. She feels that it also has the formative and restorative functions to it. And there's some reinforcement done by Swayam's world. So your comments on this?
Yes, the formative and restorative function too. So in terms of, can you just specify in what terms you are saying formative and restorative functions?
Yes, sir. I mean, formative, it shows what exactly are the growth and development points in educational development kind of area, or supervising our own skills and self reflection. And coming to restorative, I think so. Mostly, I went it with emotional well being and support. These are the two aspects. Like, as you said, normative actually goes with the managing the structure, as you mentioned, the governance and all those. Yes, but I also felt that it has this formative one wherein from childhood to adulthood, or where we see everyone, they are focusing on the growth, development, improving their own skills, and reflecting what exactly they practiced, or where exactly they went wrong, or where exactly they are going right, like Bhishma Mahapita and all those. And restorative and support, when I spoke about this, it talks about what exactly is giving us stress, what is challenging us, like how to deal with this and challenging situations. That was my understanding, sir.
Yes, you are right, Shweta ji. आपने
Hmm.
बिल्कुल सही कहा. There is not just the normative aspect, But also,
Hmm.
when I'm saying the normative aspects, it does not mean I'm just looking at the political or maybe something related to the governance part, rather than something that we are, somehow trying to achieve, right? Something ideally, like what should be done, right? What ought to be done. That is something when we it comes to the normative aspect, fine. And it includes actually the formative and restorative, because when we are trying to do something, it should have the formative part. It does not mean that something is given, right? But we want to modify
Yes.
over a period of time.
Hmm.
अगर हमें बच्चों को पढ़ाना है, being a educator, being a teacher, we to have some of the, one by step we have to follow. It is not something just we just made a syllabus, we just have to implement it, we just have to force it to the students. Rather than what we have to do, we have to see how students are responding to it. If they do have some problems, some troubles, we have to see how to modify it. This has been done. And we see when it comes to, Shri Krishna and the discourse with Arjun, that whole Bhagavad Gita, what we see here, that it is not just one way question, right? It is not just Krishna is as an educator, as a teacher, is just, conventional sense he's just giving instruction, giving lectures. Rather than he's trying to, push the student, the Arjun, or the curious scholar, that you have to begin with your problems, you have to discuss your queries, and then you have to find out the ways also. I'll just provide you some options, right, that I am having, but you have to choose a right path. So that involvement is actually the formative part. And when it comes to restoring something that has been maybe something, for example, after the war in the Mahabharata, what we see that Yudhishthir is not very much, sure about it. Like, I have won the war, victory has been done of the Pandavas, but what to do now? Why should I rule now? So after restoring, we have this parva called Shanti Parva. Shanti Parva is after the war, शांति कैसे हो सकती है? इट इज वेरी डिफिकल्ट. वॉर के बाद तो, युद्ध के बाद तो श्री पर में आप देखेंगे कि देयर इज दिस, everybody was crying, a lot of problems were happening after the war, devastation has been done. So at that context, how to restore, right? वापस से शांति को कैसे establish किया जाए, धर्म की स्थापना कैसे की जाए? So for that reason, it provides that kind of possibility also. So therefore, that normative aspect that I am having, right, those ideals, those virtues I'm having, that is something a very, future centric thing that I'm having with me. But to apply it to the, maybe we can say, to the learning process, to the unjust elements of the society, or some problems that we have faced, उनसे बचने के लिए क्या solutions हो सकते हैं? तो वहां पर हमारे पास वो restorative part भी relevant हो जाता है, that you have just mentioned. So yes, it has a lot of things to be connected. So yes, you are right, ma'am. So this is what I thought of giving some of the viewpoints here. So I hope it is somehow making sense.
Sir, and I also have an answer, I think so. I don't know about the exact word, but according to what I studied from my literature point of view, when you mentioned all these three narrative structure, the Smrti and Hermeneutic, I think so discourse is something which is actually the encompassing all these things.
Sorry, you said discourse is something that is?
I mean, the word which is actually coming to my mind, you asked, right? You when the question, the narrative structure, the Smriti part. So I don't know the exact word, but basically I feel discourse or elucidation is one kind of word that is coming to my mind, or even the
Okay.
retelling part. I already mentioned it, revision and retellings. But yeah, these are the three words that are coming. I don't know the exact words of Sanskrit or
Okay.
Unna.
No, fine, fine. It is fine. So it is not, again, since if I'm talking about Mahabharata, or I am just saying that this would be the only answer, that would be that it is not going to do justice to my whole whatever I have just delivered. So yes, you are right. A good example you have just said. It is fine enough. So yes, what else? Like, do we have some other questions, ma'am?
Yes. We will take Zelam's comment. Yes, Zelam is there with us in the meeting. So let us take Zelam's comment. She's saying there are two instances where dharma is explained by Bhagavan Krishna by the act of Rukmani Swayamvar and Subhadra's abduction from her Swayamvar. So what I believe that in both the instances, Shri Krishna sets an example of the dynamic way of fulfilling dharma by safeguarding one's interest, even if it is going against one's family to do so. So there is no one rule of following the dharma. Its nature is dynamic.
Yes, right. So when we are talking about dharma itself, rigid nahi hai wo. It does not have a specific boundary, right? But it does not mean कि वो पूरी तरह से fluid भी है. There should be the essence and the mean and the end, that we call it. For example, in today's time, if we discuss Gandhi, for example, Gandhi talks about that means and ends जो हमारे वो दोनों ही पवित्र होने चाहिए. Fine. So यहाँ पर actually जो main concern है कि even if we are using something, the means are pure. That means if we are doing something in the paradigm of dharma, वो धर्म क्या है? हमारा व्यक्तिगत धर्म हो सकता है, मेरा स्वधर्म है, राइट, मेरा समाज धर्म है, मेरा परिवार के प्रति धर्म हो सकता है. सो आई हैव टू सी हाउ टू मेक अ बैलेंस बिटवीन इट, राइट? सो these two acts are somehow considered to be, at one point of time we sometimes criticize that Krishna did this abduction of Subhadra. In a just in a vague sense, if we just read this particular statement, we can say Krishna has done something wrong. But we have to go to the context. We have to see what exactly are the different chain of events that has happened, right? And when once we read the whole structure, we can, with our consciousness only, we can, easily understand what is wrong and what is right. So that kind of consciousness need to be developed, and somehow वही आपको धर्म को समझने में help करेगा. This is exactly what we can do. And yes, वैसे धर्म का जो nature, it is dynamic, as Zila ma'am, you have rightly mentioned it. So yes, you are right. So yeah, I have also just mentioned the question. So yeah, Shweta ji ने लिखा है discourse, we can say, can be called dharma gatha. Yes, looking at all, yes, dharma gatha we can say. And fine, what else we can have? कुछ और examples अगर हो तो, मतलब चलिए मैं जो मुझे लगा, मैं भी अपना एक तरह से व्यू आपको बताना चाहूंगा कि तीनों ही चीज में जो कॉमन चीज थी. If we see narrative structure, when I was talking about narrative structure, I was not talking about very limited part. मैं ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा था कि there is one narrative style that has been adopted by the composer of the text or the tradition, right? Rather than they were multi-layered things. Similarly, when I'm talking about the cultural memory, Smrti gives the scope to reinterpret, retelling, commentaries different हो रही हैं. So again, that multiplicity वाला aspect वहां भी connect हुआ है. And in this part, that is interpretation is also having that possibility to look at from a different perspective. So there is this particular thing, we can say, the diversity को acknowledge करना, right? That can be the very common thing. Like in all these things, जब हम कथा की बात कर रहे हैं, तो वो कथा कहना का मतलब क्या है? हम कोई स्टोरी एक हो सकती है, प्लॉटिंग एक हो सकती है, but it does not mean that it is the only way of looking at it. So when we are talking about Mahabharata, we have to see that what are the possible areas. So multiplicity, या अगर मैं एक आपको संस्कृत में जो हमारा वैदिक एक phrase है, that is एकम सत विप्रा बहुधा वदन्ति. That is, there is one truth, but the intellectuals or the scholars, they interpret it in a different way. So that is very much relevant when it comes to Mahabharata also. We have different discourses, different stories, but all of them are having a common essence of dharma, essence of protecting purushartha. So if in a story that is not being respected, it means it is trying to portray the problematic part also, है ना? या कैरेक्टर का हम जब गलत या सही देखते हैं, ध्यान देते हैं, तो we'll see कि okay, fine, because of this action, this character is not going well. There are some, we can say, the hero and the villain का जो हम लोग diversion करते हैं, this is just because of it only, right? So this is, I guess, what I feel. So ये मेरा एक छोटा सा एक observation मैं कह सकता हूँ, और I am not sure आप लोग इसको अगर you can agree to this part. I hope it is fine. And in the end, what I've just written it, that narration is both worship and education here, right? And I have also referred two important articles that I am also sharing, the copying to this thing, so that I can just stop presenting also. And two links I am attaching here. So one is the notion of welfare in the Mahabharata, that is again, as madam has mentioned in the beginning of the session, that is on Indica's YouTube channel, which is on the narrative, that where I have also referred a few of the narrative part of the Mahabharata, again related to the concept of welfare only. But there is one of the very important part if we want to study the narrative style in the Indic tradition, and particularly in the classical Indian thought. We have this particular book called Indian Narratology, which is written by Professor K. Ayappa Panikar. It actually helps us to understand what are the different views, not views, but different techniques we can say, right? So अगर हम काव्य के रूप में देखें कि काव्य का स्टाइल जो है स्टोरी टेलिंग का या नरेट करने का, नरेटोलॉजी का, वो कैसा है, या वेदों में क्या था, या हमारे पास वैष्णव स्ट्रक्चर में क्या है, फाइन. सो देयर इज अ डिफरेंट चैप्टर्स आर देयर, एंड वो सभी चैप्टर्स अलग अलग एस्पेक्ट्स को उसमें एक्सप्लेन किया जाता है. सो इफ वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट महाभारत, सो देयर इज वन चैप्टर व्हिच इज टॉकिंग अबाउट महाभारत वाला पार्ट, महाभारत और रामायण का पार्ट, fine, but there are other aspects also, so you can go through this book. It is a very good book. You'll get it maybe Flipkart वगैरह पे easily accessible है. You can buy this from there, right? So this is something that I wanted to discuss today. Now if we have some other questions also, so we can discuss that as well. So thank you so much for being very patient and अच्छे से सुनने के लिए. Thank you so much to everyone. Nidhi ma'am, over to you.
Thank you so much, Pinku. Even though I have heard Dr. Pinku speak on the Mahabharata multiple times in previous FDPs and also during some other sessions that he has facilitated, as also during his PhD open defense, but I realized that every time I hear from him, there is something new to learn, some aspect of the Mahabharata and the narrative tradition that it carries forward. There are some new ideas that come forth, and I'm very glad and very happy that Pinku mentioned Professor Vishwa Adluri's work. In fact, I think his student Joydeep Bagchi is also kind of has done some excellent work. So if all of you can kind of look up Professor Adluri's work, he's a professor in the Department of Philosophy at Hunter College, New York, and he has authored a dozen articles and essays on the Mahabharata. In the chat box, I've just shared one link of his lecture on Dharma and social justice in the Mahabharata. So please feel free to check out it. He's basically working on ancient thought, both Greek and Indian, and what is the reception of this ancient thought in modernity. And one of his very well-known works is the Ne Science, a history of German Indology. And of course, he's critical of German Indology. So he's one scholar to follow, like I mentioned, Professor S.N. Balagangadhara. He's one scholar to follow. Yes, Zalem is thanking you for your session, Dr. Pinku. Okay, Madhavi ji is also, Dr. Pinku ji explains very clearly. That's wonderful. We still have about 5 minutes wherein we can reflect on the question that Pinku asked. I'm just trying to locate the question once again. Just a moment. What is common among these three parameters: cultural memory, interpretation, and narrative structure of the Mahabharata? The response that I was thinking about, Pinku, is dharma. I thought dharma was the common thread. Why? Because I feel that even if we talk about multiple truths and multiple interpretations, they are still held together by the idea of dharma. And dharma defines our civilizational framework, our civilizational knowledge corpus, understanding. And while there are these multiple interpretations, each of them maybe tries to adhere to dharma in their own ways. As Salem was also trying to explain that the concept of dharma is very fluid and dynamic. Yes, of course, we have Dr. Chitra with us. I don't want to let her go without sharing her insights with us. So yes, as a communication and media educator, I would request Dr. Chitra also to share her thoughts on this session.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Nidhi. And I must say it was a very, very nice session. And he explained everything so nicely. I had to go offline because of power cuts here, because of bad weather. So I couldn't hear whole lecture. So I have subscribed to, I think that's his channel, Indica channel. I have subscribed to it. And I'll definitely listen to whole lecture. Then I'll be able to comment it, because I mean, since we are in journalism college, so questions of students are completely different. I think there should be a line between the narration or interpretation and distortion, because there is, there is an interpretive tradition. People tend to distort it. Like he also talked about these novels. So there is an author, celebrity author rather, I should say, Miss Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. So she has written two books like Palace of Illusion and The Forest of Enchantments, one on Sita and one on Draupadi. And I think she has distorted facts. And whenever we ask, she always says that because of this, this is how I interpreted this. So, I mean, when we discuss such things in class, students ask different questions. So maybe when I listen to all the lectures, I'll be able to ask some questions. I'll be able to raise some doubts.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Chitra, for joining the session. And I'm glad that you have brought this very important observation about distortion. I would go even further to the extent of saying that sometimes this distortion is not innocent. It is done with a malintent.
Intentional, yes.
Yeah, with some kind of malintent to serve the author's own purpose. And I do know a little bit about the author that you are referring to. And this is what is very tricky about Indian traditions, specifically about Indian storytelling. In fact, one question that kept hovering in my mind as I was hearing Pinku speak was that it's great to have these multiple ideas and interpretations, but what if down the passage of time, the core civilizational essence is lost, and somebody who doesn't have the patrata, मुझे ऐसे लगता है कि भारतीय ज्ञान को समझने के लिए आपको पात्रता भी होनी चाहिए, आपकी कुछ क्वालिटीज होनी चाहिए. So maybe you don't have the patrata and you use your imagination and creativity to not just distort but also completely twist and turn the core civilizational message that was so well heard for such a long time. So that's an injustice to the entire civilizational corpus. I was thinking about it, but we do understand that in the layers of knowledge and discourses in Indian knowledge system are so complex that there are lots of debates and ideas and opinions that keep emerging. But I am personally very happy that as a media educator, wherein there is so much of responsibility on our shoulders, you have brought this aspect of distortion to our attention. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Swayam Ji, I don't know your ID, Swayam's word.
Yes, Madam Swayam. Yes.
Yeah, Swayam Ji, can we quickly
I have a question for Pinku Ji and yes, Dr. Pinku Ji and Nidhi Ji. That as we check.
Swayam Ji, just give me 1 minute. I would request Dr. Pinku to respond to Dr. Chitra's comment. Then we take your question next.
Of course.
जी,
वो चेन टूट जाएगा ना थिंकिंग का, इसीलिए.
हाँ, मैं बस छोटा सा मेरा एक इनपुट था कि as you have just mentioned about this distortion वाला part, so it is something when I was talking about the cautious होना, कि why it is important when I am saying interpretation or reinterpret करना, so that caution is very much important. Otherwise this distortion can just, वो अर्थ का अनर्थ होना कोई बड़ा काम नहीं है, वो बहुत छोटा सा वो seconds में वो पूरा अनर्थ हो जाता. This is what is happening today. Because we are not able to read the text, we are not going through the possible. जब मैं possible बोल रहा हूँ, again there is this, it does not mean पूरा fluid है. We have to be in that धर्म का घेरा. उसके बाहर जाने के बाद फिर it is very difficult. So even I was about to write a question. I have just written down that question in the chat box. मैं अभी send करना रह गया था when you were talking about this. So before sending, I would like to just mention that question from the participants. I thought of asking this, that who is the most misunderstood character in the Mahabharata? So यहाँ पर इसका मतलब, अब again it will help you to understand to what extent we have that distortion वाला idea, या हम उसको वाकई में हम समझने के distortion के माध्यम से हम क्या करना क्या चाह रहे. So that dilemma is very much important. So usually yes, स्वयं जी ने कर्ण का reference दिया है. So या द्रौपदी के बारे में हम लोग कई बार हम जब स्टोरी पढ़ते हैं तो हम लोग वो एग्जाम्पल नरेट करते हैं कि द्रौपदी ने ऐसा बोला कि अंधे का बेटा अंधा. And we sometimes we criticize Draupadi's character, but we do not read the text itself. या हमारे पास एक उसका आइडिया नहीं होता है कि एग्जैक्टली कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हुआ क्या होगा, या वाकई में कहीं बोला भी है कि नहीं बोला है. So we don't give that much emphasis to the context, rather than what we do, that interpretation, reinterpretation, TV serials, इन सब के माध्यम से जो हमारे पास आ रहा है, we are just looking at it and we are going and we are just talking about it. So how to deal with it? So वो हमें precaution के साथ we have to come to these texts. So again I would like to request all the participants to please reflect to this question and come up with your own small reflection, whatever you understand. Maybe I'll share one Google link so that वहीं पर आप लोग छोटा सा एक type करके 150 words में कुछ छोटा सा you can just write down. So we can have some idea कि exactly what is to what extent we consider one character right or wrong. So that would be a small exercise for the coming section whenever we'll I'll be taking one session maybe next week. So उस बीच आप लोग उस पे थोड़ा सा काम कर सकते हैं. That would be one thing, right? So question I'm just sending in the message also. आप मैं इसका link भी एक बार मैं कोशिश करूँगा.
हाँ, मैं उसको FDP के ग्रुप में भी डालूंगी. And of course we have one more session by Zalem and one more session by Dr. Pinku in the next week. So yes, स्वयं जी please आप unmute करके अपना प्रश्न पूछिए.
Yes, ma'am. That is not exactly a question. Actually, I was checking on Google that Mahabharata consists of 1 lakh verses. But if we go and see the other versions of Mahabharata, I checked that Vashya's Mahabharata actually started from some 8,000 around verses and then developed to 1 lakh verses, or like that. And then it is about Sharala's Mahabharata, which is from Odisha, Sarala Das. And his Mahabharata actually consists of more verses than Vyasa. But he also excluded the part of Bhagavad Gita in his writings. So my question is that, can we say that this is totally that we want to show that how people should practice righteousness in the society, Sarala wrote and Vyasa wrote, they were actually trying to promote righteousness in the society. Can we say like that, as per their versions of Mahabharata?
Yes. Yes, please. The floor is yours, Pinku.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, thank you so much for this particular observation you just made. So मैं दो चीजें in this regard I would like to mention two important things. One is regarding the text. You are saying that there are multiple versions we are having, and in one version we have even more than 1 lakh, right? So when we are reading a text, so there are two different ways, right? Two different evidences we can have. One, when it comes to the Mahabharata itself, we have some specific shlok that specifically mention that it is a kind of sahasra, 1 lakh shloks are being written, right? So that is one way of looking at कि internal evidence हमें बोल रहा है कि उसके अंदर 1 lakh श्लोक है. So maybe there is a possibility कि over a period of time some shloks were being misplaced, or maybe interpolation की वजह से new shloks were added to it, है ना? That can be one way. Another रिसर्च बेस्ड जो एक हमारा एक एग्जांपल हो सकता है, एक सोर्स हो सकता है इसको समझने का, वो ये होगा कि भंडारकर ओरिएंटल इंस्टीट्यूट्स क्रिटिकल एडिशन, दैट is actually it has only around 90,000 shloks. It does not even have 1 lakh slok. And what is the reason? Because of this critical edition, they have tried to compile a consensus based method they have applied, ki how different manuscripts, how different versions are having some common shloks. They have only covered those shloks as a part of critical edition, and some of the duplication or maybe inconsistent shloks were missed out, right, in the text. So that can be one way, right? So वो textually जो research based एक काम हुआ है बहुत अच्छा महाभारत के ऊपर, तो we can rely on that particular text. And एक चीज जो आपने बोला कि even if whatever the number, it is not going to matter to that extent, because the essence when we are again saying महाभारत में एक श्लोक है कि whatever we find there, धर्म अर्थ काम मोक्ष से जुड़ा, it is no you will easily find it everywhere. But if something is not written in the Mahabharata, it would be very difficult to find it anywhere else. So that essence actually signifies that it actually shows that the didactic nature, the nature of teaching the people, that is the main essence. The number of shloks are not very essential. It does not mean they does not hold any relevance, but it is not the primary goal. महाभारत का होना ही ये है कि वो कैसे हमें इस भारत भूमि को या इस particular, not just civilization of India we are saying, but how to deal with the lok sangrah, how to talk about the bhut hite rata. So these are the essence, these are the concepts, those are actually relevant to the discourse of Mahabharata. But yes, in terms of the shlok and the literary style, we do have a lot of research going on, so we can talk about that as well, right? But the essence जो आपका कहीं ना कहीं मुझे लगा कि आप सरला जी का जो टेक्स्ट है उसके रिगार्डिंग आप पूछ रहे थे कि टू व्हाट एक्सटेंट इट इज good or not, I guess, है ना? तो yes, it is something very good contribution, so we should not deny that fact. Yes, so I hope I am to some extent fine with the question. मैंने सही से समझा और I hope I answered it well.
Yes, sir. I was just comparing between Sarala's Mahabharata and Vyasa's Mahabharata. Then a question came to my mind, so I asked you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Swayamji, for that very interesting question. And
Thank you.
we are glad that as participants, all of you are bringing your own understanding of our epics and storytelling traditions to this platform. So please keep sharing your insights and inputs with us. There are 7 more sessions to go. Today was the 3rd session. We have 7 sessions to go. So there will be multiple opportunities that we will have for discussion. The last question for the day, I will read Arpit Ji's question, which I think is interesting, and I think Dr. Pinku is the right person to answer it. How does Mahabharata define dharma? That's one part of the question. And how to operationalize political learning from the Mahabharata into modern day policy making. Why I said that this question is relevant, because Dr. Pinku explored the ideas of welfare in Mahabharata, so he is best suited to answer it from his own thesis study.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for just coming up with this question. Yeah, Arpit ji has asked this question. Ji. So there are 2 questions. The very first one, somehow I've tried to touch upon this question even throughout my presentation, that dharma is not a very rigid phenomena here. It is something that talks about the how to a more ethical framework, we can say, something that talks about the good life, and good life of not just an individual rather than the masses, right? So how to talk about something that dharma rakshiti rakshita, right? If we are protecting the dharma in turn will protect us, right? And it does not mean dharma is having this that in general time, in normal times, there can be doing something can be considered as dharma and something else can be considered as adharma. But at the the same action can be treated in the apad dharma. There is this distinction has been made in the Mahabharata itself, that we do have a samanya dharma and apad dharma. So if the situation requires certain kind of actions, those are very much important to perform at a particular point of time, so that in later phase it can help us, because if something we are not doing at present, it can stop us to do some larger goal, to achieve larger goal. So that we always have to think about to what extent if we are doing something in a dilemma, so which particular path is helping us to achieve the larger goal. And that larger does not mean just something connected to my family or just connected to my village, rather than the whole world. So that is what exactly dharma is here. It is about welfare, it is about the well-being of like every being, right? Not just individual, not just a society, but the nation, the world. So that kind of very, it encompasses everything, we can say. Sometimes it is a problematic thing, we can say that it is very vague to understand, but that is the very, the core of this. So we cannot negate that, because this is what it makes a different thing from the other concepts, other Western concepts, and even other Indian concepts, right? So one of the, we can say, the findings that I have somehow found during my PhD, that when I'm talking about ideas of welfare, so the dharma is considered to be one of the very relevant term that has been used in the Mahabharata, like one of the, almost more than 5,000 times in the English translation, if I would say that I have referred in my thesis, like as one of the text of Vivek Debroy also, the translation of Bory's edition. So where I found that this term has been, much relevant, like almost everywhere dharma term हमें दिख रहा है, और उसके connection में whatever the context is going on, it is talking about welfare only. So therefore dharma is considered one of the major thrust area of the text itself. Fine. So yes, this is regarding first question. And the second question, when we are saying political learning, so before operationalizing the political learnings of Mahabharata, we have to understand what does it mean actually. Political learning का मतलब क्या है? Does it mean that we want to create some kind of resource management, or we are just talking about how to have the better positioning at the decision making power? Am I just thinking about us versus they? Am I talking about the conflict based political understanding? So what exactly is all about when I'm saying political learning? Fine. So if I am talking about that negative aspect of political learning, for sure we have a lot of examples in Mahabharata. But yes, when we are saying Indic knowledge system or Indian tradition की जब बात कर रहे हैं, we have to see that political learning means how to be, that rationality, that how to become a sthit prajnana, how to be a good leader, right? So with the help of different examples from the Gita, Shanti Parv, and some other examples, we find that different aspects of political life, like in political life, how to contribute to the betterment of society, because politics is nothing but a part of society only. That should be our ideal. It is not about the society is working for the politics, rather than it should be the other way around. So if we are having the other way approach, then only we can have some findings, some help, or something positive from the Mahabharata. Otherwise अगर हमें गलत चीजें देखनी है, अगर हमें politics का मतलब ऐसा लगता है कि we'll be having a superior position, we'll be having more resources for us, that would be a problematic aspect. So that is not going to be practically, again वो वाला part हमें लग सकता है कि easily accessible है, but we have to see one step ahead. That means that politics, we have to redefine the concept of politics, and not exactly redefining, rather than revisiting the concept of politics in the context of India, Indic tradition. That is very much important. Fine. So this is अगर वो हम कर रहे हैं, तो policy making is all about talking about welfare. It is about good life of people. It is about good life of people who are at the margin, right? And all these things are very much relevant in the Mahabharata. We have found a lot of examples, a lot of stories that talks about directly or indirectly about that welfare only, that policy framework only, right? So we have to look at the concept of politics को पहले समझना पड़ेगा to understand, to operationalize it in a better way. Fine. I hope whatever I just said, it is making any sense to your question, Arpit ji.
Yes, I hope Arpitji, Dr. Pinku has answered your question, and it was a very interesting question posed by you, and there is much more scope for discussion on these aspects of how learnings from Indic wisdom and Indic traditions can be applied to modern day ecosystems. Yes, Nagaraj ji, I will be doing this at the end of the FDP. All the reading materials that we want to collectively share with all of you, we will all put it in one document and our administrative team will pass it on to you. So please do not worry about that. I'm already compiling all the learning material shared by different resource persons. So I'll do that. But if you can just keep a tab of what is happening in the WhatsApp group, that's great. Okay, so it's 8:13 and I have to close today's session. So last comment by Madhaviji, I'm reading: situation, character or a role and time changes dharma, or we can say defines dharma. Absolutely correct. The situation, the time. Kalyug ka dharma alag hai, Satyug ka dharma alag tha. Uh, Absolutely correct. And things from Mahabharata can help us promote a holistic approach to our society. Absolutely well said by Swayamji. So thank you, participants, for all your interactive sharing, inputs and insights, and your active participation through this session. Please continue this spirit through the remaining sessions as well. And I hope you appreciate and you find these sessions useful that have been put together to give you an overarching view of the storytelling traditions of Bharat, which are very organically a part of Bharat's civilizational knowledge corpus. And once again, I extend gratitude to Dr. Pinku Jha for, first of all, once again agreeing to be on the NLD platform, for sharing his insights, his wisdom, and his ideas on the narrative traditions in the Mahabharata, and helping us understand it in three components: the narrative structure, Smrti, and the hermeneutical tradition. I think this will help us approach this text and also other Indian knowledge texts from a very different perspective. So with this, we close the session and we will regroup tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. for a session by Dr. Vikas. Thank you, Dr. Zelam, Dr. Chitra, for joining us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Pradyuman sir, also for joining the session. Namaste, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nidhi ma'am. Thank